Guys, this is Matt. It's what is it? It's Saturday the 17th of yep, 17th February. Um, so I was thinking about um, trader psychology a little bit earlier today, actually kind of throughout the whole morning, and I just kind of wanted to do a video on it. And later, the plan is to maybe make a more dedicated series to this. But uh, but I figured today, to hell with it. I'll just kind of sit here and chat for a little bit, see what comes of it, and if I think it's maybe helpful, then you'll probably see this, and if not, then you'll never know it even existed. So I just wrote a couple things down on paper here, actually, and then I've got a little thing on Twitter I want to talk about. But so one, I was thinking about the main things that happen to traders that affect their ability to stick to a system. And so, those are things like FOMO, which most people know. It's fear of missing out. There's a thing I call ikimo, which is I know I missed out, right? That's when you missed a trade and now it's like a home run and you're sitting there thinking, oh shit, that sucks. I can't believe I missed that. Um, that I think sometimes is worse than FOMO because fear of missing out is relatively easy to tackle because you're fearing something that hasn't happened yet. Whereas when you're regretting something that has already happened and you just didn't become a part of it, I think that can be a little bit more challenging. So, um, and then also like loss aversion, right? So FOMO can make you chase trades or get into trades that you maybe shouldn't get into that don't quite fit your system, right? So if you have a certain set of criteria that you're supposed to follow, but you're seeing this trade set up, it doesn't quite meet your criteria, and so but you start thinking like, yeah, but if this takes off without me, I'm gonna be pissed. That's FOMO, right? You're fearing that you might miss out on something, and it can make you take trades that you shouldn't take because it's not part of your system, right? You have a system for a reason. I guessing, I hope. That goes into a whole nother thing of like, where did you get your system? And if you got it from a bubblegum wrapper, you maybe don't have that much conviction in it. So that's why you're not sticking to your system well. And if you got it from Twitter, maybe you have even less conviction than the bubblegum wrapper one because Twitter's a cesspool. Um, and then there's, I know I missed out. That's, I call it Ikimo. uh, and so that's a thing where, like I said earlier, you didn't take a trade and then now it's an awesome trade. And that can happen either it's a system trade or was a system trade, and for some reason you didn't take it because you got scared or shaken out of it somehow. Or two, it wasn't a system trade, but you really wanted to take it, and now it's awesome, right? And so what that could lead to is, well, the next time you get a trade that's setting up that you like, that isn't a system trade, you're more likely to take it, even though it's not a system trade because of that one you missed before, right? Last time I didn't take a trade like this, it ran away without me. And then the one you take, by the way, is going to be the one that completely claps your cheeks and stops you out right away, right? Uh, and then, the other thing it could do is just make you more aggressive and or start revenge trading because you missed out on the big one, and now you're starting to look at anything that remotely resembles a good trade to get into. And again, it just means you're not sticking to your system. And then loss aversion is a funny one because sometimes I was just watching a trader the other day who has a 1-to-1 risk reward ratio, but a high win rate. And they said that the thing that's they're still doing wrong is, and by the way, this is Iman on YouTube, Iman. He's done some good series on exposing some of the gurus out there, and then he's kind of being really, I think, transparent about his trading journey. He's over trading futures, but he was talking about the thing that's holding him back still is moving his stop up because not wanting to take the full loss, right? But his system, apparently, I don't know it very, very in depth, but requires a full 1R stop loss and a full 1R profit target. And you just set it and let it play out. But he keeps moving his stop, which I'm not laughing at him. This is something we've all done at some point, right? Because you don't want to take that big 1R loss because that wipes out at least one of your winners, right? Um, and he keeps moving it, and then he gets stopped out, and then the trade would have played out had he just left his stop in the right place. It would have would have played out and have been a win, right? So anyway, those are some things that happen when your psychology starts messing with you. Um, and so anyway, I was just thinking about like, well, what are those and why do they happen? And part of it, I think, is how your risk size affects your psychology. And this is something that seems obvious to me, but I just don't see that much about it. But it's like, if you're uncomfortable with your risk size, you're gonna do stupid things. You're gonna be in a state of fear, or however we want to look at it, right? Where you're more likely to do loss aversion, right? Because if your risk size is, say that I'm going to go back and use that one to one risk reward for now, right? And I'm not picking on iMan anymore. I'm just using that as an example. But uh, yeah, if your one R is, I don't know, like 10 grand, and you're barely paying your rent, like you're gonna do some stupid shit, man. Like that's just too much risk, right? I mean, you'd be crazy not to be afraid of losing $10,000 if you're just barely making ends meet, right? And this, so I just feel like some people just try to jump in, and a lot of times because I think beginners want kind of the, all right, I want to be financially independent via stock trading or some sort of commodity trading, like, and I want it in 6 months. I want to leave my stupid job that I hate and make this happen. And so what happens is, they end up just trying to risk too much to get that reward, and then it's that very risk too much that ends up screwing them up mentally, which ruins their system, which makes them a losing trader, or might even make them blow up an account, right? Uh, so, yeah, I feel like your risk size has to match what you're comfortable with, and that might start out really low. If you go back and look at my videos from like years ago when I first started this channel, and then I took a, I don't know, 3 year hiatus or something. I just stopped making videos. It wasn't I was mostly making videos because I had a small account with CMEG, and I stopped that account, so I stopped making videos. In hindsight, I wish I would have continued. It probably would have helped me a little bit to talk about this in public, my more of my journey. But when you look back, I was trading literal cents. Like I was trading one share at a time on some stuff, and I used to joke that when I won it, that it made me a rich man or something like that. Because I would be like, "Oh, I'm up $1.17 today." Like, who gives a shit? But I was just one. It was a little bit better than paper trading for me, even though it was so small the amount of money. But at that point in my life, and that's actually a lie. I was thinking it was longer ago than that. Point in my life, I was pretty financially stable, and right now I am too. There have been points in my life where I was living paycheck to paycheck, week to week, almost meal to meal in some instances. And so, man, like risking a lot of money on one trade that just might go against you seems, it would have been ridiculous at that point, right? And when I even a couple of years ago when I was trading that small amount is because that was an amount I was comfortable with trading, and I was in a live system, getting used to it, not getting like paper trade fills, which can affect how your system performs, right? So it was at least a live account, just with money that didn't really matter. And then slowly I kept increasing my risk. And I did the same thing once I got an account with Cobra, and I got got into shorting small caps and all of that stuff, and I had to start out with really small risk to the point where like it didn't make sense with fees and stuff to keep trading that way because I wasn't making enough to cover fees, right? And so I would have to just increase my risk and increase my risk, and the thing is that you slowly get used to the numbers, right? I mean, in the beginning, if I had a $50 winner, it was like a great day, right? And then you get to a point where all you have is a $50 winner, and you're like, well, this day didn't do anything for me. Like that was almost a waste of my time because now you're used to $500 winners. Um, and that just slowly happens over time. And you can systematize that if you want, where you say, okay, every week I'm going to add a percentage or a dollar amount to my risk, and take your position sizes based on that. But however you want to do it, you just slowly expose yourself to more risk over time, and your ability to remain calm in the face of that risk grows with you. And I just realized that someone could edit the video to say that I told you to slowly expose yourself. Don't do that. You'll get arrested probably, or maybe you'll do it to a person who's into it, and then you'll have fun. I don't know. But so yeah, I feel like your risk size is really important for solid psychology. I think the wrong approach is just saying, no, no, I'm going to keep stomping the risk at 10K per trade and just force my psychology to get better at it. I think that's the wrong approach. I think the right approach is lower your risk size, get your psychology good at that risk size, and then slowly increase your risk and let your psychology get used to each level. Um, it reminds me of, I'll make a lot of analogies to this, but what I do still for my day job is I am a health coach, and one of the things we do is coach on tobacco cessation, so helping people quit smoking and stuff. And it's kind of the reverse of using nicotine patches. You start uh, with a higher level patch, a higher dosage of nicotine, and then you kind of let your brain get used to not smoking or breaking the habits, breaking those bad habits with that amount of nicotine, and then you end up you use the lesser amount of nicotine, the next step down, and you start to have cravings again, and then you let your psychology adjust to that level of nicotine, and then you keep doing that until you finally stop the patches altogether, and that's kind of the last step, right? This is kind of like the same thing, but in reverse. You're letting your psychology get used to each step as you increase risk. Um, so anyway, I think that's important. I don't see that talked about very much. That like, hey, if your psych is screwed up, possibly it's just your risk level is too high. And part of learning how to trade is a lot of patience and just knowing that uh, hey, this is going to take a long time to really learn not how to trade, but learn how to control yourself. Because in my experience, most of becoming a decent trader, and I'm not going to say I'm like an awesome, amazing pro trader or anything like that, but becoming a decent trader who is profitable has been more about learning about me and my psychology and my ability to manage my emotions and follow systems than it really has been about finding a system, although that's been a big part of it. There are systems out there that are just timeless, right? They've been true the entire time the stock market has existed, and they're easy to find. They're just not easy to for most people to implement, and so then many people, they'll blow up and they'll blame the system when really it was their own damn fault, right? Um, that said, I kind of think there's a interesting. So I found this on Twitter, making myself smaller here. Um, I forget who shared this, but it was this thing from Tom Dante, and I'm not necessarily arguing with him. I don't care to, but I wouldn't anyway because I kind of know what he's saying here. But he's talking about when I'm taking a position, I ask myself, how surprised will I be if this stops me out? And if the answer is anything less than very fucking surprised, I don't take the trade. And I was like, oh man, I guess that depends a little bit maybe on your win rate. And really what he's trying to say here is be confident in your setup so much so that you don't expect to get stopped out because you know your setup works. Um, but there's a lot of traders who have like a 30% win rate, right? So they're getting stopped out 70% of the time. So I don't know how much you can be very, anything anything less than very fucking surprised, right? I don't know if I said that properly, but I think you know what I mean. Like, if your win rate is 30%, you're getting stopped out 7 out of 10 trades. I mean, like, how confident can you really be that your trade is going to work every time? You go in knowing like, oh, I get stopped out 7% of the time, but on those 30%, I hit fucking home runs. So yeah, let's get after it. I'll take a shot here because this fits my system. Again, I think maybe the way I would modify this is just to say be super confident in your system, not necessarily that every trade is going to be a winner, because I think that's even in a 90% win rate system, you're wrong, right? Not every trade is going to be a winner. You're setting yourself up for what I would think is some bad psychology, right? Because you're going to take a loss every once in a while. And in those 90% win rate systems, those losses are big and probably hard to swallow, especially if you always think you're going to have a winner. And I've seen that. I traded in those rooms, man. Those guys do not handle losses well, some of them. Uh, so yeah, the way I would modify this is I would say be really confident in your system and then that's going to play out over time and know that again, I'm speaking about a low win rate system, like let's say 30% again, know that even though this trade and the next one might get stopped out, your system works over time if you're applying it correctly. Um, there are nuances there about systems, and most systems still take a good trader who has some pretty good intuition and overall understanding of the market. And people call it situational awareness, which I think is the wrong. I don't know. I don't like that term for the stock market. Um, More like maybe market awareness or something, but situational awareness just reminds me of like self-defense stuff where you're walking down a dark alley and you notice the person wearing a hood in the corner. That's situational awareness to me. So, uh, yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, I don't know. I thought I saw this tweet and or whatever it is called now because it's not on Twitter, it's on X. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that for a little while because I feel like again, if you're not careful with that kind of an attitude of being super confident in every trade, it could make losses hard to take for some people. And again, I'm not arguing with him because I think I know what he was saying is be confident, right? And when you go to take a trade, you shouldn't be second guessing yourself, and you shouldn't. Even if you know you get stopped out 70% of the time, you shouldn't be second guessing your trades. If you are, there's a problem. Either you don't have confidence in your system, you have too much risk. Uh, yeah, I don't, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just those two that I'm thinking of right now. Again, this is not a super formal presentation here, guys. Yeah, your system and your psych are linked, right? I talked about most of this stuff already. So progressive exposure, Um, yeah, I would maybe just talk a little bit more about like the difference between the win rate systems, right? Like if you have a 90% win rate system that's, small wins, big losses, that happens more, I think, in the small cap world. The idea there is that higher win rates compound accounts a little more quickly, which there's some theory to that, and I can see that, but it also creates big drawdowns. Like if you take a couple max losses in a row, which is possible, but sort of outside. I mean, it's within the parameters of your system. It's just very unlikely, but it happens, right? And I mean, it can cause a huge drawdown in a short amount of time. So that's a different that's a different psychological tool set that you need than a 30% win rate system, which maybe grows a little bit slowly compared to the others, but also doesn't have gigantic drawdowns over just a few trades. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, in one, you've got to be, I guess the advantages to a high win rate system is that you don't take losses very often, so that's good. Psychologically, you kind of don't have to deal with that very often. When you do, they're mammoth losses sometimes, right? Not every loss in a high win rate system is a max loss, so sometimes they're not huge, but every once in a while you get that one that just rips your face off and you take a max loss, and that's hard to deal with. The other thing that's sort of actually a double-edged sword or mixed blessing, however you want to look at it, is you don't take losses very often, which is cool, but also you don't take losses very often. So how do you get good at it psychologically, right? You don't get that much practice out of it. If you wanted to learn how to play a guitar, and you only practice once a month, would you get very good at it? Probably not, right? Or it would take a really long time. The more you experience something, the more you can practice dealing with that experience and learn how to adapt to it and learn how to become psychologically in control. You can think of other things that might be scary to people like skydiving, right? If you go skydiving once and you're scared out of your mind, but then you do it once a week from there, probably in a couple months you'll be less scared, right? You'll probably be more used to it. Um, so with a low win rate, or sorry, a high win rate system, you experiences those losses less frequently, which means you have less practice at controlling emotions after that, which is maybe not great because if you don't learn how to control those emotions with that system, well, then you might start doing stupid things every time you take a big loss. You might abandon your system. You might start revenge trading and make the loss even worse, which leads to an even bigger drawdown. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that can go there, right? With the other system, with a say 30% win rate system, um, you have to get used to taking losses like all the time. And sometimes they're really small, but you just have to get used to it's like in sales, I guess you have to get used to being told no, right? And this you just have to be used to, like, okay, I'm going to lose like 70% of the time, and that's going to suck. Like that can really be hard sometimes especially when you go on one of those, like, you have a literal streak of 7 to 10 trades that are losers, and you start to feel like, damn, I can't string anything together. What should I do? And then you start to feel like maybe I should just take a break. Maybe the system isn't working. You have to realize that, probabilities wise, that's perfectly acceptable, and it's just within the system, and you're just going through a shit patch. Now, that could be a area for market awareness where you go, okay, am I applying this system in the wrong time? So there are some things you want to start looking at when that happens, but the bad things you can do is like abandon your system, or start changing the way you're doing things just because you're going through a little bit of rough patch. But that's where experience counts, man. Right? An experienced trader will know when to say, okay, that's enough of this shit, or just like, I just gotta grit my teeth and get through it. Maybe you do take a little bit of a break because the market is not in the right space, and you go, okay, I'm gonna go piss off and go to the gym during market hours for a week or two, and then come back when the market conditions are more in my favor. That's perfectly acceptable. So yeah, I don't know if I want to get into some of this other stuff that I plan to talk about. Um, One thing I will ask, this is just kind of a hypothetical, and yeah, I think we'll end it here, because I want to give you something to think about. So, the question I wanted to pose was, what do you think is worse, missing a winning trade? So, in other words, you saw a trade set up, let's say it's part of your system, you talked yourself out of it, and it became a giant it became a giant winner. Um, so, either that, or taking a losing trade that you shouldn't have taken. In other words, you took a trade that wasn't part of your system, you talked yourself into it, and it became a max loss, let's say, whatever that means for your system. Again, this could be a little system dependent too, because you know, but just just in general, just think about that. Think about what's worse: missing a winning trade or taking a losing trade that you shouldn't have taken. And just and when I say what's worse, I mean what makes you feel worse? If you think about that, if you put yourself in that position, which one makes you feel more shitty? And then consider the implications of that answer, right? Consider, why does that make me feel worse? Is that something about my personality specifically? Like, what's the emotion there? Is it, do I have regret? Do I have embarrassment? Do I have frustration? Um, what are the emotions that I'm experiencing, and why? And what does it say about me? What does it say about my trading? And just kind of ponder that for a while, because those kind of things, and this is stuff that I'll want to get into in other videos, but those kind of things I think are the topics that, or the practices that will allow you to grow. You really have to do some introspection and figure out, all right, when this shitty stuff happens and I feel a certain way that makes me want to do terrible things, what are those things I'm feeling? Why do they appear? Is this something that's happened in other areas of my life? Have I always been this way? Are these emotions that I just don't handle well? And where do I go from here? Then at least then you can start to maybe look for more specific psychological help. And I'm not necessarily talking about therapy or anything, but just like, if you realize that regret is one of your biggest struggles, regretting something about your trading is just the thing that derails you more than anything else, then you can start to look for, like, hey, how do I deal with regret? Right? You've pinpointed more specifically what the problem is, instead of just how do I, you know, how do I do psychology better or whatever people Google when they're trying to learn this stuff. So anyway, just a question I wanted you to ponder, and feel free to share in the comments as much as you want, and I'll try to interact with you as much as I can on there. Obviously, the channel's not really big at this point, so who knows what'll happen there. But yeah, anyway, that's it for now. I'll cover some of this other stuff later. I don't feel like talking anymore. My voice is already going out on me, and I'm sick. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you Tuesday for the market. All right, bye bye.